Combat Theory presents.
As a coach, as a corner, do you ice your fighters? No.
I'm lazy. No, I'm joking. That's not why I don't ice them.
Do you want to tell us your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll tell you my thoughts on this. I don't think there's been any strong evidence to show that it's like a benefit physically. And then two, you never train that way. When you're in the gym, you don't go in between rounds of whatever drilling, sparring, pad holding you're doing. You don't go sit on a stool.
You don't ice them.
3 people come and give you a nice little massage with an ice pack, and they got it on your neck, your head, your chest. They're telling you to breathe.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you're by yourself. If you got a coach who's a little more active, they're talking to you in between rounds.
Yeah.
They're telling you to breathe, but you really don't have the stool. You don't do any of these things.
Yeah.
So my corner, if you look at it, is pretty much my fighter stands, unless they tell me they like to sit, but most don't. They want to stand. Cool. That's what I prefer. And I'm just going to talk to you. And now the next round's up.
Yeah.
You give them the water. Water helps sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very low maintenance in the corner. Now, do I think that's the best thing? No. I would like a good second who can maybe massage a leg or two if needed.
I actually looked this one up, and
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I actually did a little research here. And then I actually have a piece of this that I think is fun as well. But there is a study about icing, and it is entitled The Effects of Intermittent Neck Cooling During Repeated Bouts of High-Intensity Exercise. Okay, this is research out of Cal State Fullerton, and that was performed by Dr. Andy Galpin. I actually met Andy Galpin at the UFCPI a couple years ago. He's a young cat. He's a young guy. He's like probably, maybe he's in his 30s. He's a cool guy. He's a nice guy. And he has done a lot of research now on MMA at Cal State Fullerton. He did this study in 2016. And the purpose of his study was he was looked at the influence of intermittent neck cooling during exercise bouts to mimic combat sports competition.
Okay.
Right? So essentially he's trying to figure out, does icing your neck, does cooling your neck help in your recovery? Okay. This is how they did the study. They had 3 different conditions. Okay. So in a scientific experience, the experiment is considered a condition. The first condition was they did nothing for the athlete. The second condition was that they iced their necks. And the third condition was that they sprayed menthol spray on the back of their necks. Okay. So all of them did all 3 conditions. Okay. So every one of the athletes did all 3 things over a period of time, allowed them to recover. And then they looked at what the results were. Okay. This is what the experiment was. All of the athletes did a warm-up. Then they got onto a cycle, cycle ergometer is what it's called, and they rode the bike for 5 minutes. It was 20 seconds of all-out max effort and then 15 seconds of passive effort.
Kind of like a Tabata.
Yeah, exactly. So they would go high intensity for 20 seconds, and then for 15 seconds they would basically just kind of pedal a little bit.
Yeah.
If they just kind of, like slowed down, there was no limit to how slow they could go.
Gotcha.
And then they would have to, after 15 seconds, they have to
Maximum
go
effort.
maximal effort. And they did that for 5 minutes. Then they would have a 1 minute rest period. So obviously, what are they trying to simulate?
They're simulating a fight.
An MMA pro
Explosive,
fight, right?
Explosive
Yeah.
recover.
So then during the rest period, they would get either the back of their neck iced for the first one or the second one or the third one. And then they would then go into the second round. They would do the exact same thing on the cycle. They would then get their second rest period where if they got iced in the first one, they would get iced again, obviously. And then for the third round, what they would do is they would do an all-out single bout to exhaustion is what they called it.
Fun.
Where they had to be at 30%, which is not super high, 30% of their peak power, and they had to go for as long as they could.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically they were trying to simulate a 3-round fight where they actually finished the opponent in the 3rd round, basically.
Gotcha.
So they did it, all of the athletes did it one time with ice all the way through, one time with cooling mint on the back of their neck, like a menthol.
Yeah.
And the 3rd time, or one of the times, they did it with nothing.
Right.
And this is what the research.
Which is what I make my fighters do.
Which is what you're making your fighters do, because you're a jerk. No. Obviously, they tracked skin temperature.
Okay.
So what was the temperature on their core? What was their temperature on the back of their neck, their forehead, their legs?
Yeah.
They tracked gas exchange. How much CO2 are they getting rid of versus how much oxygen are they breathing in?
Mm-hmm.
Heart rate. And then they tracked 2 kind of like psychological things. One is what's called RPE, which is the rating of perceived exertion. How tired are you? You give me a number typically between like 1 and 8. And the other one was thermal sensation. So they basically asked, are you hot?
I see.
Right? Or do you feel hot right now?
Yeah.
Here are the results. Pretty simple. Skin temperature changed only on the neck for the ice only.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't change for the other 2. And it only changed during the first rest period. When they iced the neck for the second rest period, there was no skin temperature change. Their thought process was the athlete had gotten so hot by the end of the second round, it
would take too long
to cool their skin back down. So that what we in science we call that diminished over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gas exchange did not change regardless of the condition. So they breathed in the same amount of oxygen, they expelled the same amount of CO2. Thermal sensation did change. The athletes that said that they were, they felt cooler were the ones that were being iced.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that had the menthol spray said that they felt somewhat cooler, but it wasn't considered significant where the ice was. The big thing here is going to be what's called, again, rating of perceived exertion, which is RPE. All of the conditions, they reported feeling the same after the first round.
Yeah.
So when they went into the second, they all felt exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
The ice did show to be statistically significant after the second round. So after the second round, when they got their second rest period, the athletes that got iced did say that they felt that they were less exerted going into the 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
This does suggest that like the perception of being colder exists without you actually physically being colder.
Yeah.
Because their skin temperature had not changed.
Mm-hmm.
However, with all of the conditions, their time to exhaustion in the 3rd round remained the same.
Yeah.
So if subject 1 and all 3 of them could only pedal for X amount of minutes in the 3rd round, regardless of whether or not they were iced or not.
So I'm right. I'm right.
So that does suggest that there is no real benefit to icing that we currently see in research.
Yeah.
Obviously, the researchers did say that that they haven't looked at the physiological and psychological effects of icing. And there's been no data where they've looked at actual fights where, the guys that get iced win more, lose more, whatever.
I was going to say, I love this because it kind of does reinforce what I believe, that it's more of like, it's a feeling thing than a fact thing. But imagine doing that study, but like with sparring instead of on the bike.
Yeah.
I don't think they would quickly go, who gives a shit about the ice? I have to fight this guy.
Yeah. we actually, okay, so here's my fun fact on this one. I have when I was working on my master's degree at UCF in human mechanics, my professor, Dr. Fukuda, is a judo guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big combat sports guy. He read this study and we reproduced it in the lab.
Oh, wow.
So we did this exact study in the lab. We didn't publish it, but we did it as like as a class. We all came in and just did it.
Wow.
So we had subjects from the class, students that volunteered. We didn't use a cyclogometer. We actually used a rower.
Okay.
So what they would do is they would do 20 seconds of all-out rowing, and then they would just sit on the rower for 15 seconds. And same protocol and everything. But we also took core temperature, where this study did not take core temperature. We still took skin temperature, but we also took core temperature. So I can tell you that in that non-published, just reproduction, core temperature was also not affected by icing. So your core temperature remained exactly the same. And all of our subjects had the exact same results.
Yeah.
They all said that they felt better being iced, but none of them were able to perform better on a rower either.
Watch this entire episode for free on YouTube or wherever podcasts can be found.